was saying, we like to get started with an opening exercise to make us a little more present. So I'm going to share my slides and launch this with you. So. Okay, you should all be seeing the intro slides. Yes, I see some head nodding. Great. So this is an exercise that brings us into the context of where we are today, which is the coronavirus virus and this crisis we are all in. And obviously, there's a lot of problems associated with the coronavirus virus that we all have to deal with. And this is really changing the world. And we can spend a lot of time talking about all the problems that we face. But in our work in regenerative development, we tend to look at a situation from the perspective of potential. So in this breakout, and we will be in group of 3, take this time to think about the work that you do and the specific groups or communities that you serve through your work. And then think in terms of what new potential at this moment, in this moment of crisis, what new potential can you see for the groups or communities that you serve, for your profession, or maybe for your colleagues and direct professional environment, and then for yourself. Okay, so shifting your mind to the potential that you can see with respect to the communities that you serve, your profession, and yourself. Okay, so you'll have about 10 minutes. And so if you're familiar with Zoom, you're going to see a little window showing up. You accept to go into the breakout. And then we'll call you back in about 10 minutes. You will have, I believe, a 1-minute warning. So have fun with this question, and then we'll debrief and tell you a little bit more about ourselves and Regenesis.
Okay, Beatrice. So, I will just make some comments in Portuguese here. Então nós vamos separar, né, o grupo em grupos de 3 pessoas para nós começarmos esse aquecimento. E a primeira pergunta, né, talvez algumas pessoas tiraram aí um print da tela, mas é para nós pensarmos a nossa prática em termos de potencial versus problema, né? Então é para nós tomarmos um tempo para pensar sobre o trabalho que nós fazemos, né, nas comunidades que nós servimos especificamente, e tentar enxergar alguns potenciais, né? Quais potenciais nós podemos perceber para essas comunidades, né, para essa profissão que nós fazemos partes e para nós mesmos, né? Então, essa perspectiva do coronavírus traz muitos problemas associados, mas a pergunta fica, nós podemos olhá-la também a partir de uma perspectiva de potencial? Então é isso. Agora eu vou colocar vocês para uma sala separada e vocês têm que apertar aí o botãozinho para aceitar esse convite, senão vocês vão ficar no limbo. Pronto. Simone, não apareceu para você? Thank you, Ben. I'm running here the timer, so when it's over, I close the rooms. Thank you for being here with me.
Do you want to pause the recording now?
Oh, sure.
So we're going to do just a few reflections about this exercise with a question: how was this experience for you of shifting your focus from problems to potential?
It's a open
We
mic.
should talk or write in the chat?
Yeah, just speak out, because it's a very big group. So yeah, if you have a reflection, just remember to turn on your mic and then speak, and then remember to turn it off again.
No nosso grupo foi muito forte a presença de voltar para a terra, as pessoas que são da cidade, e isso, para mim especificamente, que sou agricultora, o potencial é da gente revalorizar os agricultores, né? E no grupo as duas mulheres também tinham terras e estavam construindo essa resiliência. E a vida em comunidade também, a gente valorizando muito a vida em comunidade.
Felipe vai traduzir para eles?
No, we can go ahead, Patricia. If you feel comfortable to share in English, it's okay, but I don't think in Portuguese we have a problem with that. So please, if someone has to share with us.
Anyone, again, what did you experience in that shift from problems to potential? How was it for you?
Well, I already had that vibe. All my online spaces are exactly targeted to showing the good things that are going on. So I'm always more connected to solutions than problems. And in my group, there was just another person. And we were talking about how it was nice to see the collaborative economy in action, because everybody had to share resources. I had this in my neighborhood because of the digital platforms we have, WhatsApp and online communities. It is really easy to put out there some request, and very rapidly someone come forward to help you. And we also talked about the big mobilization we saw from companies and people with NGOs to help with causes. And we could see the bubbles outside of our own bubble, what was going on in other bubbles. But I also have this personally, this fear that we need to sustain this evolution of consciousness and this movement. Otherwise, if we see historically, we had huge crises before, and humanity came back to the previous state and kept doing bad things and even more abusive things with nature. So I think it's a great opportunity if we are able to sustain this thing and put it forward. Otherwise, I think maybe we can go back to our comfort zone.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue. So what I want to do is briefly introduce Regenesis Group to you by telling you a little bit of a story about how it was created and why it was created. And in a way, we created Regenesis because of what Patricia was just saying, that even in a crisis, when things can change really dramatic in the moment, it's very hard to sustain that change through time. And so I had spent many years before we started Regenesis. We started Regenesis 24 years ago. And I had spent many years doing ecological design before that. And what I observed, and my colleagues observed, is that we could do really great designs, permaculture and solar villages and all of these things. But if we didn't work on the thinking of the people that we were working with and the communities that we were serving, the changes didn't endure, they didn't last. And that's when we began to really realize that we needed to do something else that had to do with changing the way that we think as a society and what we base our decisions and our designs and our choices on. So 24 years ago, we brought together two technologies. One is called permaculture, which many of you probably know. It's a sophisticated ecological design process. And the other came out of years working in organizational development. And it also was based on living systems and on a fairly deep theory of change. And what we wanted to do was bring these two technologies together to change the way human beings inhabit their communities, inhabit their places on Earth. And so it was an idea that we had. We didn't know how to do it when we began. And we spent many years trying to figure out what regenerative development actually means. What is it? How do you practice it? What's involved? And we did that not theoretically. We did it by doing projects in the field. We did all kinds of projects: community developments, real estate developments. We worked with universities. We worked with schools. We worked with communities doing economic planning or sustainability planning. And we even worked in companies, businesses, and organizations. And across all of those years of work, we little by little were able to develop a theory and practice of regenerative development. And some years ago, we published a book about this topic, which you can see on the screen, Regenerative Development and Design. And also, we began an institute, we began an education program and an institute because it became very clear to us that we needed to help other people learn how to do this. It's not something, Philippe will probably be able to tell you, it's not something you can learn from a book. You have to actually learn it through practice and through working with people who understand it. And so that's why we created this education program and the institute that offers it. And Beatrice has been very involved in that institute. So I'm going to turn it over to her and she'll say a few words about the Regenesis Institute.
Sure. And if I can move my slides. Here we go. Sorry. I connected with Regenesis in 2013 when Regenesis launched the Regenerative Practitioner Series, which is the course that we offer. And at the time, I was already working with living system theory and principles, and I was looking for people who were actually doing work from a living system perspective. And I found the right match with Regenesis, and so I stay closely connected after taking the course, and I am now faculty for the Regenesis Institute, which formally launched in 2018. and as a nonprofit dedicated to educating practitioners all over the world. And as Ben was mentioning, our premise is that in order to have an impact, a powerful impact and effect on the community and the world, we need to continue developing ourselves. And this requires to be working in community, to be supported by a group. So we are launching community of practice in place. And we're now offering place-based courses where people living in a particular city and a particular community come together for the course and then continue working together as a community of practice to support one another in a lifelong learning development. The Institute is supporting those community of practice and all the graduates that we have. We have about 300 graduates now through a co-learning network. So all those places, we have 7 places in the world, multiple in the US, we have in New Zealand, in Australia, in Europe. We have all those community of practice that are connected together as members of the co-learning network. And some of those members meet with Regenesis faculty on a monthly basis to continue their own development. And having this network allow us to actually harvest all the learning that is happening at all those different nodes and raise the overall intelligence of the overall network so that everybody can continue to learn and develop as a global community. So I think that's kind of an overview of the Institute. I will talk a little bit about the course at the end of the session today. So Ben?
Yeah, thanks, Beatrice. I just wanted to emphasize one of the things that is specific about this whole idea of regenerative development, which is that it's based on experience. It does not start from theory, it starts from experience, which is one of the reasons why we started with a little exercise where you get to think about your own experience, and then everything that we offer is intended to build on that experience and for you to be able to test it in your experience. And I hadn't realized how much of the work that's being done in this whole space of regenerative is not based in practice. And because we've always assumed that you have to have basic experience and practice from which to learn. And so it's one of the things that we really strongly emphasize. It's not enough to have an interesting theory. You have to actually figure out how to apply it, how to do this in practice. So what we're going to do now is one of the things that we work from in regenerative development are living systems frameworks. And what's on the screen right now is an example of a living systems framework that I'll describe in just a minute. And then we're going to have you go out and play with this framework a little bit. So again, you build your own experience with it. And then when we come back, we'll reflect a little bit on that, and we'll open it up to have a little bit of question and answer if anybody has questions. Okay, so this framework called Levels of Paradigm was created by one of our colleagues, Carol Sanford. And the basic idea is that over millennia, over long periods of time, humanity moves through different paradigms, through different ways of seeing the world. And one of the significant things that people are observing happening in the world is that we're engaged in a kind of paradigm shift. And so being able to notice the paradigms from which you're thinking can be extremely powerful, particularly because old paradigms don't necessarily go away. They tend to get buried, but they're often still there in our thinking, even as we're trying to move into a new paradigm. So this is a hierarchy, which means that each of these paradigms is intended to be at a different level, meaning it's able to manage more complexity, more richness. And I'll just walk through them and describe in a couple of sentences what each of them is supposed to mean, and then we'll have you go work with this for a little while. By the way, because you can't take the slide with you when you go into the breakout groups, you might want to take a little screenshot of this so that you can hang on to it. You'll be able to have the slide after the session. It'll be in the recording and you can have it. But for now, if you want to continue to work with it, you might want to either write it down on a piece of paper or take a screenshot. Okay, so extract value is the idea that if I'm going to put energy into something, I want something back for the energy I've put in. If I spend money, I want something back for my money. And the idea is that there's a kind of transaction going on. And ideally, if I invest in something, I want to get more return for my investment than I put into it. This becomes a driver for our economy, and it becomes a driver for people being willing to take risk. However, it also is pretty purely transactional, and it's the orientation, the way of thinking is how can I get the most for me out of this situation? How can I get the most for me out of this landscape, out of this store that I'm buying something for? How do I get the best deal for me? And that leads to all kinds of abuses in terms of our economic system, including the destruction of much of the planet. So a lot of business currently is organized around the extract value paradigm. The arrest disorder paradigm comes into existence in part to address the abuses of the extract value paradigm, right? So if through our economic activities we create destruction, either in communities or in ecosystems, how do we put in place laws, regulations, supervision to help stop that destruction from happening? How do we balance it out in some way? So a lot of the ways that governments, for example, manage what's going on in capitalist societies is about making sure that all of that business activity doesn't end up destroying everything. So the arrest disorder model is about making sure that if we damage something, that we keep that damage from being too great, or we're able to correct the damage. It's a very problem-solving kind of orientation. The next level up, doing good. This is what a lot of the impulse to make a better world comes from. Right? That we want to be kind to our neighbors. That we want to share the benefits of society, that we want to be sure that everyone is well taken care of and everyone has an opportunity. All of that comes from a doing good. It's the idea that there are virtues that we want to live by. And many NGOs work on arrest disorder, but also there are quite a few that work on doing good. right? Bringing bringing organic gardening into city neighborhoods, for example, or working with children to learn music and that kind of thing. The problem with the doing good paradigm is that it tends to be generic. It tends to be based on ideals. So that, for example, I have a sense of what's good, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to have some of that. And the problem with this is I may or may not have a clear understanding of what's good. So quite a bit of colonialism, for example, comes out of a desire to do good, right? To bring development, to bring economic prosperity, to bring Christianity and all of those things into a place that doesn't have them, without asking whether these things which we think are good are actually good for this new community. Right? So the doing good idea comes out of a belief that we know what's good. And so it can create all kinds of problems that we didn't intend. This has been a real issue for certain practices in the environmental community, for example, or in the international development community. Okay, one more step up to evolve capacity. This is looking now, and this is the level that we think of as being regenerative, that what we're looking at is not a generic idea of what's good, but what in this particular person or this particular landscape or this particular community, what is the essence of that individual living entity? And how do we evolve the capacity of that living entity to express its essence into the world? How do we, for example, teach children not just the things that allow them to fit in with society? How do we evoke in them their own unique character, their own unique expression into the world? How do we help communities not all become the same in terms of solar energy or something like that? How do we also help them become truly who they are, unique, and with their own unique history, their own unique culture, their own unique landscape and ecosystem, and evolve, grow and develop them so that they can express that into the world. Okay, so that's a quick description of this levels of paradigm framework. And what we'd like to do is have you play with it, try it out, see if you can make sense of it by working with it in breakout groups. And Beatrice is going to introduce a little exercise for you to do in breakouts.
Thank you, Ben. So again, we're trying to work with really concrete situation, lived experience. So start by thinking of a recent difficult situation that you found yourself in. And look at the levels of paradigm and reflect on which level of paradigm were you working from when you were trying to address that situation. Were you in a more transactional approach at extract value? Were you trying to solve the problem? Were you trying to do something good? So look at the level of paradigm or evolving capacity. And if you were in the lower level, what would it have required for you or of you, and that's very personal here, to move yourself to a different level and hopefully think in terms of evolving yourself all the way to the evolved capacity paradigm. Okay, so look at which paradigm you were using in the situation, and then a reflection of what it requires of you to move yourself up to a higher level of paradigms all the way to the evolved capacity.
So Philippe, this might be a good moment to do a little translation, yes?
Ok. Então, pessoal, a gente vai para mais um breakout room, a gente vai trabalhar um pouco nesses níveis de paradigma. Então, seria interessante tirar um print da tela, né, guardar aí com vocês, ou anotar esses 4 paradigmas e essas perguntas, né? Então, o exercício é: pense em uma situação difícil que você passou recentemente, uma situação específica que você experienciou em primeira mão, e tente identificar qual nível desses 4 paradigmas você estava trabalhando, né? Então, nesse caso específico, você consegue associar um desses 4 paradigmas que ficou mais vivo no seu comportamento, na sua forma de lidar com essa experiência? E a segunda pergunta é: o que seria necessário de você, né, para mover um diferente nível de paradigma? Não a outra pessoa, mas você particularmente, especificamente, o que seria necessário acontecer para que você mudasse desse jeito de enxergar, né? Para que você mudasse de paradigma, levando em consideração esses 4 paradigmas que o Ben descreveu aqui. Beleza? So, I'll make the breakout rooms, Ben, okay?
And about 20 minutes, Philippe?
20 minutes? Então, 20 minutos agora para nós trabalharmos nesse exercício. Então, lembrem de aceitar aí a mensagem que aparecer para vocês. Vamos lá. Então agora deve aparecer um botão aí para vocês clicarem para irem para a sala, para começar o exercício.
Felipe, eu acho que eu rejeitei meu botão sem querer.
Tá, vou te colocar de novo, eu assinei.
Obrigada.
Cadê você? Cadê você? Pronto.
Again, a good time to pause the recording.
The conversation. So again, I would open it to a reflection about this exercise and what it was for you today, but also moving on to the question of, from this exercise, what did you learn about what it means to, what regenerative development is all about, if regenerative development is at the evolved capacity paradigm? What does that mean? And also, and we are going to open it to questions around regenerative development. So feel free to jump in. But maybe a few reflections about the exercise first.
Okay, I would like to share my thoughts on this. I'm Brazilian, but I'd rather speak in English, okay, if it's okay with everyone. Regarding this explanation related to the several layers of paradigms, since I'm a little more familiar with this concept of regeneration, etc., I feel that we have to take into consideration that if we analyze how life has evolved in the universe from very simple unicellular beings to highly complex beings such as us as humans, you know, we have to consider the possibility that in terms of socioeconomic evolution, we should mirror the same kind of pattern, you know, that unless we enter a paradigm that allows the socioeconomic environmental realms to evolve continually, it doesn't make sense to maintain forever the same socioeconomic structure, because we have to understand the laws of evolution on the life side and try to mirror this in our socioeconomic public planning, etc. Basically, this is what I would like to share. Okay.
Thank you, Neil.
I would like to share as well. I think we can go back with what Ben has said in the beginning about changing the mindset. We have so many wonderful concepts, frameworks, and tools that we can implement, but without changing mindsets of people, the resilience of the applicability of and the outcomes from them, it's not going to stay longer as it can. So I think this is essential to understand the mind setting them regarding to the level of paradigms as well. So as long as you have different stages here of meaning making, and you start to interact with the planet in a different paradigm, and the emergency as well that you are in the system affect how you act. So and then yes, as long as you change the mindset, you can emerge and going up and down on this paradigm, I would say.
Thanks, Patricia.
Patricia, I jump in and just offer a comment on what you were just talking about. Beatrice and I had a really amazing conversation yesterday, and she was talking about her research into chaotic organizations. You know, there's a lot of work done on how to create self-organizing organizations. And she said one of the discoveries they came to was that you have to have principle. If you want to create a self-organizing organization, you have to have principles guiding the organization. You have to be leading from principles. And I said, you know, that's very interesting because it's a great insight, but it doesn't move us toward regeneration, because you could have that same idea at any one of these paradigms. Right? You could operate out of a set of principles that were formed from an extract value paradigm, or you could operate out of a set of principles that were formed from a do good paradigm. But what we're trying to reach to is operating from a set of principles formed out of evolving capacity for all living beings. So I just wanted to elaborate on what I heard you pointing out. Thank you.
I'd like to write on that. My name is Federico. I'm a life scientist and been focused on regeneration for the past year or so. And I think that my contribution is that, yes, it's about principle, but then also how you lead on those principles. So probably regeneration has a lot more to do with creating conditions and facilitating and letting go of what you think is good, and designing something based on principle and facilitating it. It's kind of like gardening. You don't really know what's going to happen to your garden. You just know that if you do A, B, and C, you have a rough idea that X, Y, and Z should emerge. And that something so simple is not really reflected into a lot of the way we manage our power. I'll give you a very simple example. When I look for funding for a regenerative project, I inevitably need to sell something to that donor and compete against other people who then writes a contract, and then I have to go and do that somewhere in the territory, and that already gets me out of facilitation. So there's something also levels of scale, and I think part of the challenge that I find with regeneration is that you need to work very in place and being very committed to that place, but without closing yourself in. And how that dialogues with the nested systems dilemma is one that I find in particular very hard to navigate, because the incentives in each system don't necessarily coincide, and that's how we get to your coercic system. Thank you for this webinar.
Yeah, Federico, the other thing that was implicit in what you're saying is that it requires a tolerance for uncertainty. And tolerance for uncertainty is one of the things that's missing in an awful lot of business, economic, governing systems. So we have to, if we want to be in an evolutionary process, we have to relearn collectively as a society. We have to relearn to be interested in things unfolding in unexpected ways and to be able to work with that, which is kind of like your point about the garden. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to tap into the conversation. And yeah, building on that, it's amazing how uncertainty and being on uncertainty brings that quality level of exploring potential. If not, it's just like a linear focused way of delivering. I'd like to share as well my exercise, and it was like kind of going in between, talking from myself on internal considering, as well as having external considering on the people that I work with, like the communities and all, how to tap into the essence, why they call wealth. And I found a bouncing balance on the levels of paradigm, as well on the leverage points, on when that steps on within myself and with the program I get involved or convene for. So that was really helpful as well. Thank you.
I also would like to comment here, just to give my contribution. In our group, we were talking about several cases, but there was kind of a common point, which is like the changes that were caused because of the coronavirus situation, and the need to hear all perspectives, because it's such a complex problem that comes out of, you know, having to transform a course that would be in person into online, or canceling it, or, you know, what are the implications of, you know, traveling arrangements and all that sort of thing. And it was interesting that the three of us had similar kind of scenarios. And one thing that came out was that we need to hear all these perspectives, all these voices, and how this is important to evolve capacity. And then I told them that this is one of the things that I come to realize of the opportunity, because I work with sociocracy. We have this built-in, you know, like this way of decision-making by consent, which listens to all the voices, and at the same time is effective, is reaching that result. And this is the kind of tools that we need to be able to, yes, look into all these perspectives, be effective, and at the same time, just know that, you know, it's such level of uncertainty that whatever decision that we make is just good enough for now, and it's safe for now, but it's not something that's going to be like long term. So it's going to require a lot of iterations so as to keep evolving. So it feels to me that, you know, everything that sociocracy and, I know, like self-management tools are providing has everything to do with this level of evolved capacity.
Yeah, one of our terms that we use to describe what you're pointing out, Nora. We call it being developmental, meaning how do we in every situation recognize the inherent potential in the people or the organizations or the communities that we're working in, and help challenge them and support them to actually move up, to evolve, to be able to express that potential. One of the things that we always look at is, regardless of the tools that you're using or the methods or the approaches, regardless of the context within your working, can you begin to approach it from a perspective of evolving the capacity of the people and the living systems that are there? And what do we need to learn to be able to help people? What do we need to develop in ourselves if we want to help our communities and our nations develop themselves? So it's not enough just to be good engineers or good entrepreneurs. We have to also be good at developing all of the people that we're serving and that we're in contact with. Cool, this is amazing. Okay, who else has something to offer?
Hello there. What I found in common in our problems was that all of us were forced to expand our consciousness. And it's a very interesting process because you have to go out of yourself, an ecstasy, towards a community, towards a planet, towards whatever, but that is the very same process of going inwards. So it's very, very fractal in a way that you go all the way out there only to back in and then go out back again. It's like a torus, it's a fractal. Lots of sacred geometry came to me. And it's the underlying basis of what we do, because we can be very much deceived by our own ego. The doing good paradigm really struck a chord on me. It was like, yeah, Anna, you thought you were doing good, but you were doing your own good, which is not enough. It's a process. So the expansion of consciousness was my main the residual message of what we talked about, and that the dance between the extremes, and how to gain rhythm and momentum with all that. And what you just said, how can we, what do we need to do in order to help everybody develop in their own way? And their own way is the way of the living system. It's the same thing. Well, fantastic. Thank you.
Wow, that was cosmic. And it also is interesting because it was connected to this concept that I think Mauricio brought in around, we call it external considering, which is, can I sort of put myself aside and actually be that other person or that community or that other living system that I want to help? Can I sort of put my consciousness out there and be that other living entity? And for us, that's a core practice. If we really want to evolve the capacity of other living things, we need to be able to come into a kind of sympathetic relationship with them that allows us to deeply understand them and to learn from them. So thank you. That was great. All right, we have a little more time. Anybody else?
Well, I'm architect from Belém, which is Amazon, one of the major Amazon capital. So today we are dealing with a paradigm inside our society, inside our enterprise, because we are planning to achieve a higher level of society inclusion in our projects. So when I saw the doing good paradigm, I saw the modernism and the utopia from people from the 50s, architects from the 50s, which intend to create an international, very technical way to approach architecture. What we are doing to do here, what we are planning to research in Livre, which is our enterprise, is to research local vernacular, local way to build architecture from people from the countryside, and to understand how these communities build a better architecture from Amazon needs, and how can we reproduce that in the city without creating architecture based on international way to build, and how to create something from the society to the architecture. I don't know if I was clear or not, but we are trying to research what the people are doing, like from this heart, their heart, and try to reproduce here in that technical way.
Great. So one of the challenges, I've worked a lot, I mean, I essentially was a landscape architect for many years, and I've worked a lot with architects. And one of the real challenges, this requirement to work on evolving capacity is really challenging for design professionals, because we have expertise, right? And we have a brief, we have something that we're supposed to do. And yet we have to be really careful that in doing that, we don't take away the agency and the capability of the people we intend to serve, right? So it's not enough to simply think about mimicking or copying the methods and materials of indigenous or local people. It's a much deeper question about how, as an architect, am I building new capacity, evolving new capacity in every community and every project I'm working in. And I invite you and any engineers or architects who are on this call to spend time, thinking about that. I mean, it's a really interesting and not easy to answer question. Great, so thank you. And Patricia Furtado, you had tried to get in. Maybe you'll be our last for this session.
Well, I don't know if I can add something more, but for our group, it was very difficult to answer each question. We were feeling like, depending in which aspect of our life and each moment, we can see ourselves in the different paradigms. And sometimes we are relating to people or having to deal because of work with people that in this aspect, they are in another paradigm. But how the challenge for us is not to be arrogant and feel that we know more because we are regenerative, because it could be a mistake. We wouldn't be empathetic enough to understand and really to be able to establish a dialogue to transform something. So I think this frontier between the second and the first one, the evolved capacity, and the doing good is very, very subtle, because we can think we are in the evolved capacity, but in reality we think we are doing good. So this is the real challenge, not to be arrogant, to really be able to dialogue and to transform.
It's a huge challenge. Thank you. Great. Okay. Thanks, everybody. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for really wrestling a little bit with the framework. We find that this is actually the best way to learn this approach we put something out there, we give a minimum description, and then we let people work with it and try it on and play with it and see what it means to them, see how it applies. That's basically our preference for working with communities around this idea of regeneration and regenerative development. So thank you, even on a great big virtual call like this, thanks for being willing to play. Okay, Beatrice, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, just a word, and actually what Ben was just talking about this experience you had today is very much the experience that people who take the regenerative practitioner course have with us. So I'll just mention it very briefly. Let me share again my slide. So the course is very experiential. It is guided by living systems, frameworks, and principles. It is very dialogic, so very much like the session you have experienced today. It is, as I mentioned earlier, we are now launching place-based courses, so community who are local in the same place. And we've been working with Felipe and other people in Latin America, in Argentina, Peru, Brazil, to try to bring a Latin America course. So we hope that this is something that we can do in the future with the situation now, probably not this year, but maybe hopefully in the future, near future. The courses include 10 video conferences, online meetings like this, plus 3 days in-person intensive. So in this case, the faculties go to the location of the community and help hold the workshop there. It includes readings and assignments and resourcing or coaching sessions with faculties. And the course is about 20 participants. So if you want to learn more about the course and also a little bit more about our philosophy regarding regenerative development, I invite you to go to the Institute website. The link is at the bottom of the screen, regenerate.es, and you'll find more information there. And if you want more case studies and information about the work that Regenesis has done, look at the regenesisgroup.com. So I just wanted to mention that the framework that is on the slide is the meta framework. We call it the regenerative development framework, which is a meta framework that we use to guide all the course sessions. So that's the way we work. So just wanted to mention this and see if there is any questions, but otherwise I'll thank you for participating today. Any questions? Final words?
Beatrice, I will mention one other thing too. If you go to the Regenesis group, it's regenesisgroup.com website, there are a couple of resources on that website besides the case studies that Beatrice was mentioning. One is there's a set of videos on the homepage, which are pretty cool, and they're a great way to kind of introduce people to the topic. And so you might enjoy seeing them, but also if you want to show other people what this is about, those might be a good resource for you. They're kind of short videos that talk about different aspects of regenerative development. Also on that site, there is a section called resources that connects to articles and other materials that have been developed on the topic over time. So it's like a little bit of a bibliography, and we invite you to go and check it out. I mean, it's all available free, and you wouldn't necessarily know it's there. It's listed under resources. So there's a number of materials available if you're interested.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today in this exploration of regenerative development. And hopefully we'll have maybe an opportunity to interact again in the future. It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. And thanks, Philippe, for inviting us and giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Philippe.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. It was awesome. I think it clarified a lot of things for people who was following our work, and I'm really pleased to host this conversation. I will finish here in Portuguese so we can do our things. Pessoal, obrigado, valeu. Eu coloquei alguns links aí, né, do Regenesis que eles comentaram no chat. Eles falaram para entrarem lá, regenesisgroup.com. Esse é o da consultoria. Lá tem alguns materiais, alguns vídeos, e tem um site específico para os programas de educação, que é o regenerates.es no final, está aqui no chat. Perguntaram sobre o curso de desenvolvimento regenerativo. Igual eles comentaram, os cursos eles são locais, específicos para cada lugar. Nós já conversamos, né, no sentido de trazer esse curso para a América Latina. A princípio aconteceria na Argentina, não deu muito certo. Depois aconteceria no Chile ou no Peru. A conversa acabou não avançando muito por algumas dificuldades aí de organização. Espero que numa outra etapa aí, depois que a gente tiver um pouco mais de clareza sobre como vai acontecer, a gente possa retomar essa conversa e quem sabe não aconteça do Regenerative Practitioner, que é o curso que eles oferecem aqui no Brasil, quem sabe.
Se quiser fazer na Amazônia, Felipe, conte comigo aí.
Maravilha, Luiz, maravilha. So I think it's all for today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you, Ben. Hope to see you all again and to have more opportunities like this in the future.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.